Sabi na mo, huwag ka na maglaro. Mo.
Shall I lay down Frostmourne and throw myself
Sadya, ba't hindi nyo na kasi
We'll grant you a swift death, Arthas. More than can be said for the thousands you've tortured and slain.
That's what I mean. The fourth set of valves, yung unang valve na magda-drop, i-Hammer of Justice mo.
first?
Gets.
When my
Alright.
work is complete, you
Alright.
beg for mercy.
reflush.
Will deny
Mag-Holy Wrath. Ikaw na lang yung pangatlo. So it's Nard's Revenant you.
Oh, shit.
Light of Dawn is the final raid in the Wrath of the Lich King expansion and one of the longest fights, which consists of 5 phases. So I will be explaining on the mechanics and some class-specific roles during this fight. Not all will agree with our tactics, but it definitely worked for us when we are doing LOD pulls. Phase 1. During this phase, the Lich King has 5 mechanics. First is the Shadow Trap. It targets a player where the Shadow Trap will spawn, and if the player steps on the Shadow Trap, it will do an area of effect explosion where everyone near the Shadow Trap will be sent flying away from the platform and instantly die from the fall damage. And you cannot be resurrected because your corpse will be far below the platform. His second ability is Necrotic Plague. It is a debuff that he applies to a random player that deals a huge amount of damage every 5 seconds that can instantly kill players after. The tricky part here is that if you dispel the debuff, it will transfer to the nearest player or enemy NPC close to it. And it has a number of stacks which increases its damage. The stacks increase if it transfers to another player or enemy NPC without being dispelled, meaning by duration of the debuff expires and or it kills the players or NPC. However, the stacks decrease if it is dispelled from the player. Another thing to take note is that the total number of stacks present increases the Lich King's physical damage. The third mechanic is Infest. It is a damage over time debuff that the Lich King applies to the entire raid, which can only be dispelled if the player has more than 90% of his HP. Lastly, his last 2 abilities are that he summons Shambling Horror and Ghouls. The Shambling Horror is a big zombie which has 2 abilities, Enrage and Shockwave. Enrage increases its damage for a short period of time, but it becomes permanent if its HP is below 20%, while Shockwave deals an area damage in front of it and deals more damage if it's under Enraged. While the Ghouls doesn't do much concern in terms of damage to the entire raid. Tactics. At start, the raid is divided into 3 groups, the range and healer group at the left side, the off-tank in the middle, and the melee and main tank in the right side. Before pull, the Disperse should apply Power Word Shield to the range and healer group at 20 seconds before pull to counter the Infest at start. Then, the Hunters and Rogue should have used their MDs and TOTs a few seconds before pull to give the tank full aggro of Lich King. All melee DPS should use their area of effect or AoE, except for Holy Wrath of the Red Paladins to help clear the ghouls. When the Shambling Horror and Ghouls spawn, the off-tank will get it and place them between the 2 groups. As for the Necrotic Plague, the player with the debuff will only have 5 seconds to run towards at the back of the Shambling Horror and be dispelled, so that the Necrotic Plague will jump to the Shambling Horror and or Ghouls. During this phase, Hunters should use Tranquilizing Shot when the Shambling Horror becomes enraged, because this can kill the off-tank when it casts Shockwave. Finally, in this phase, the raid will be moving whenever a Shadow Trap spawns until the raid reaches the end of the platform and bring Lich King's HP to 70%. Please note that the off-tank should be ahead of the 2 groups. We should not be too far away from the off-tank to give enough time for the players with a Necrotic Plague to run towards the Shambling Horror, and not too close to the off-tank because the Necrotic Plague might be dispelled towards the other players.
Ready Plague, ready Plague.
Range trap.
Range trap.
Supreme. Yung hotdog. Spread. Uy! Ha? Uy, pabalik! Supreme! Una! Free trap. 73%.
Pinoy, Biret.
Pinoy, ikaw na dyan. Main cast.
Check mo na.
Necrotic.
Nag-lance ba ako?
Blazing.
Oh, kainin mo na naman yan ang force.
Nervates.
Don't stop to type. Jesus.
And please don't forget to like and subscribe.